Hi, I'm Dr. Anthony Edwards, and I'm the instructor for the Comprehensive Community College. And today we're going to talk about governance and administration in community colleges. All right, so let's talk about some ways that we can categorize governance in community colleges. So some have described community college governance as organized anarchy, which kind of shows kind of a contrast between terms. So there's anarchy, which means there's no real organizational leadership, and organized means there is some organization. So there's some level of both. All right. And in governance, what we're talking about is essentially who's in charge of the institution, who sets the policies, who makes the ultimate decisions. That's really what governance is, right? So governance in community colleges has also been described as a loosely coupled system. So there are systems and they have some level of connection, but not necessarily tightly linked. So there's been some fluidity and flexibility. All right. Other cases, you'll see more of a bureaucratic model where there is definite, you'll see who is in charge, and everything is formalized, and there's no real informal influence patterns. Everything is only people who have power are the people who have a formal title. Political model tends to be more about managing conflict, sometimes between faculty and administration or faculty and the board, things like that. The collegial model is, I would say, similar to the organized anarchy model, but it's really described as a flat organization. So there's everybody's equal. So you might have a president, you might have a dean, you might have faculty members, but in these cases, faculty and staff have a lot of power relative to the formal board of the administration. Okay. Now, in reality, some of this is more how leaders make folks feel, because sometimes leaders, in terms of being effective, have to make sure that certain groups feel like they have a bigger say than maybe they actually do, but giving them the feeling that they're being heard and that you're at least taking their opinions into account when you're making the decisions. But in many cases, the actual governance is more bureaucratic. Okay. All right, let's talk more about the ways you see governing and coordinating units. So obviously you'll have the local community college district, and you'll see different organizational structures depending on whether it's a small community college, a large community college, or multi-college. So the small college is probably going to have a few direct reports, like a VP of Academic Affairs, a VP of Student Affairs, a VP of Administration, maybe something else, but a lot of things are going to be under each of those VPs, right? In the larger community colleges, these are going to be more, you're going to see, maybe breaking down of student affairs maybe into multiple things. Maybe there's enrollment management or student organizations and leadership. So you may see more things broken out, right? In terms of vice presidential divisions. And you have the multi-college model where, say let's take for example maybe Tarrant County College District has multiple colleges, and they're set up that way, and each college sort of has its own president, its own organizational structure, own formal chain of command, so to speak. All right, so there's advising, student affairs, academic affairs, and all those people would report to that campus president. All right, whereas you've taken more of a model that is more reorganization, maybe a large community college, say like Collin College or Dallas College, or if they may have multiple campuses, but if they're organized essentially as one college, all of the academic advisors across Dallas College sort of report through a academic advising lead. So it's a little different in terms of who people report to. All right, and then you have this whole concept of shared governance, and where we usually see that is between faculty and administration, and faculty wanting to have a say in the decisions that are made. And like I said, there's varying degrees depending on the strength of the leader, the strength of the board, the power that the board gives the president in terms of making the decisions. Again, effective leaders take the counsel of faculty, but they sometimes have to make decisions. The challenge sometimes in this becomes, what is the faculty voice? Is it the vice president of academic affairs? Is it the president of the faculty senate? Is it individual faculty members? And so that does get sometimes a little messy because sometimes different voices within the faculty may vie for, who is the quote unquote representative of the faculty. All right, and that can create turf wars, so to speak. But those are just things as a higher ed leader you need to be able to at least be aware of and navigate. So the state has some role, right, in terms of governance. It could be through a higher education coordinating board. So Texas has a higher education coordinating board, which all of the community colleges and universities essentially report to, or in a sense, report to maybe is too strong a word, but they set policy that the community colleges and universities have to follow. And the other states, no, I shouldn't say the other states, but some other states rather, have actual coordinating boards specifically for community colleges, and then another set for universities. And then you also see, example of that is, like Colorado has a community college system, and they have a chancellor, and then all of the other community college presidents report to that chancellor. Now, in other systems or states, you'll see a community college system that includes both community colleges and universities. I know Arkansas has that with the University of Arkansas system. They've got some members of the University of Arkansas system that are universities like Fayetteville, things like that, Pine Bluff. But if you look, it's like Hope Texarkana is a community college, and but the name is University of Arizona Hope Texarkana, but it's really a community college, and it's part of that system. So, the funding and who's in charge is obviously very different in a system like that. But again, you see different models in terms of how they're organized, who's in charge. The federal government obviously plays a role in higher education, largely through funding, whether that be through financial aid. There are also other sources, ways that higher education gets funded through federal dollars, and so that could be through research grants, could be student support programs. U.S. Department of Education also funds different programs to support student success, but they can use the carrot of funding to make certain levels of requirements. Accreditation. So obviously, in order to receive financial aid, universities and community colleges have to be essentially aligned with an accrediting agency or body, and to pass that accrediting standard. If they do not pass, then they risk losing their federal funding. Okay, so again, that regulation through accreditation does enforce standards. Okay, so it is a level of governance. All right, you also see not just these or other organizations like community colleges. We also see other organizations, and you may see trade schools, technical colleges. So trade schools, I think of, there's the UTI that does a lot of programs that in terms of like truck driving and diesel mechanics and things like that. But it is a trade school, and then you've got more formal technical colleges that are really designed, and they do provide not just certificates but associate degrees in technical areas. So example in Texas would be Texas State Technical College, and that's actually a system because they have multiple locations. But headquartered, I believe, in Waco, but then they've got campuses East Texas, West Texas, South Texas, all over. And so then they provide a variety of technical training depending on the location. All right, in terms of the governing boards themselves at the local level, oftentimes they play a role of mediator between the community college and the surrounding community. They usually are composed of, say, between 5 and 10 members. They usually serve terms of around 4 years. So they evaluate, select, and dismiss the president of that institution. And they can also approve different degree certification programs, approve faculty, staff salaries. They can approve service contracts. So, there's a contract for different services that are provided to the community college. And they also can be a part of state associations. So there's basically like the American Association of Community College Trustees, and then there's essentially a Texas Association of Community Colleges. These are all types of organizations that governing boards are a part of for professional development, but also just as an advocating body for governing boards. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the presidents of these community colleges. So they typically are serving around 7 years, some more, some less. Some may be a president at another school before becoming a president at that community college. Others are moving up the ranks within that institution into a presidency. Sometimes come from academic affairs, sometimes are coming from other areas. I've seen student affairs, I've seen advancement or fundraising, so different paths for different people. They are also involved in the faculty selection along with the board. Involves a lot of public relations, getting to know the community stakeholders. Also involved in fundraising because, again, tuition and local funding often doesn't pay 100% of the expenses, and have a variety of direct reports. Can be for academic affairs, student affairs, and administration. Now, in terms of leadership, some traits that can be helpful, things like empowering others, casting a vision, taking risks, being goal-oriented, having the courage to take risk and make hard decisions, being a moral compass, right? Having a sense of integrity and also having a sense of what drives them, whether it's supporting students or having essentially a framework by which when there are hard things they have to decide that's what guides them. Being flexible, understanding that sometimes you have to adjust to the situation. If enrollment shifts, you have to make some changes, and being decisive. So, as leaders, you have to be willing to make the hard call, and sometimes you get it wrong, and you have to live with that. But most people want to work for leaders who are decisive. All right, some states allow for collective bargaining, where essentially, some organization can advocate on behalf of faculty to try to increase or better working conditions for the faculty. But really, there's 5 states where the majority of these collectively bargained contracts exist, and those are places like Illinois, Michigan, New York, California, and Washington State. Okay, but in most other states, it's not very common. They look at things like personnel policies, grievance procedures. So, a lot of times these organizations look at folks who have maybe been reassigned or dismissed, and to see whether or not that meets the standards of the organization or the agreements that have been made in the past. But they also, in general, look at working conditions, salaries, working hours, class sizes, things like that. So some of the issues that are out there in terms of governance and administration that leaders have to be thinking about. Obviously, the balance of power between the state agencies and the local institutions, collaboration between the community colleges and the high schools. It's a lot of dual credit, but just funneling folks in to make sure that we have the enrollment. Where does collective bargaining go from here? What's the future of shared governance and working with faculty? How do we hold faculty and staff accountable and make sure that they're productive in an era of challenged enrollment, so that every dollar counts? So how do we make sure we get the most productivity from our faculty and staff? What do funding formulas look like? I know in the last legislative session in Texas, we had a change in the formula funding for community colleges that has some performance benchmarks in it. So typically what happens in Texas tends to happen later in other states. So we'll have to look to see how other states work with that. Also, there's been an overall eroding of the perception of universities in terms of their value, and where does the community college fit? Does the community college then become the destination of choice? Does it not? Or are people just done with school, period? Where does community college fit in that? Do they stand to benefit from that change in how the value of college is perceived? So I hope that you found this introduction helpful in learning more about the chapter. And if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share with folks you think would find it helpful, and we'll see you in the next video, and we'll discuss the next chapter on finance and community colleges.